So I'm going to introduce our panel as we talk about the integration of entertainment and tech. First up is Taylor Jenkins at the far end there. She is the head of YouTube Canada marketing at Google, just down the street. Says here that she grew up figure skating on a competitive level and as a result almost didn't go to university.
That's correct. I was training and my parents decided for me to get an education, and I'm here today, so hopefully it was a good decision.
What's your problem with ketchup?
I have a huge problem with ketchup. I don't know why, but I have had a fear of ketchup since I was a child, and I've never tried it. I never will try it. It's been 30-something years, so I'm just sticking to it. It's really fake.
Okay. Next we have Chris Moncada. He is the general manager of EntertainmentTO Music Canada and also Last Gang Records, again, just down the street. You started in the mailroom, right?
True story.
Okay, which means exactly what?
It means that my first job was a 6-month contract at Universal Music. That's back when we actually traded pieces of paper amongst the floors of an office building. So there were 7 floors. I had a cart. It had file folder in it, and I just went up and down the elevator all day.
Next we have Arwina Mogul. Yes, that's her real last name, Mogul. Born in the Philippines, lived in China, grew up in Hong Kong, came to Canada to go to high school, has a dog that she's allergic to.
Yeah. I still have my dog, but yes, I'm still allergic to him.
What kind of dog?
It's a Chihuahua.
You're allergic to a Chihuahua?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. See, I've learned something, that you can be allergic to a Chihuahua. Okay. And finally, Kevin Lafleur. He's the president and CEO of Official Community. He's a former artist manager. He tells me that when he was on the road with a band, he bailed out the lead singer on one particular tour in 4 different currencies. Why were you bailing him out?
He had a penchant for public nudity. He'd get lit after the show, and it turns out the Germans are totally fine with public nudity, but not in the wrong spot.
Got it. It says here that you also have raised $20 million in funding, and that you hate people.
Correct.
Okay.
Those 2 things go together.
All right, so let's begin. I'm going to start with Taylor at that end. Again, Taylor's working for YouTube and Google. Can we still call it Google, or do we have to call it Alphabet?
Google. We'll call it Google.
Fine. Okay. Now, YouTube is very big in fueling creative entrepreneurship, and you deal with how you can help the sports industry. What kind of trends are you seeing in the Canadian entertainment landscape from your perspective?
Yeah. There's a few trends that I'm seeing when I think about the Canadian content landscape. I think first and foremost, there is more content to consume than ever before, and multiple ways to watch it. So the traditional concept of prime time or paid, tune-in television is really being flipped on its head. The viewer is really in control, and they are devoting their time to watching what they want when they want. And we really see the rise of streaming services and subscription services. So some new information from Media and Technology just announced that cable subscriptions and cord cutting are down 30%. So really it's what the viewer wants when the viewer wants it, and we have endless content opportunities out there. So we're talking about a concept really which is personal prime time. So whether you're binging on a Netflix series or you're watching your favorite documentary or following your favorite YouTube creator, you can watch when you want, and you can find an engaged community of people who love that passion and fuel it even more. Don't get me wrong, people are still tuning into things like, the Raptors game for sure is a big thing right now, or Game of Thrones, but primetime used to just stop there, and now they're actually coming to our platform and other digital platforms to continue the conversation. So a couple of weeks ago, when the first episode of the final season of Game of Thrones aired, over 2 million Canadians came to our platform in one day just to watch more content about the show and continue the conversation. So I think it's really a world of vast content, and primetime is really personal now.
Just out of curiosity, how many people here are bona fide cord cutters? Okay, so how many people canceled HBO as soon as Game of Thrones was over? Yeah, me too. Okay, next I want to talk to Kevin. one of the things that we're dealing with in the new digital realm is copyright. And copyright is completely broken for the digital realm. You want to speak on that a little bit and how we're going to get past this issue? Oh, I talk to you? Oh, yeah, sure, Kevin, sorry.
Yeah, copyright is fundamentally challenged because it's based on the Berne Convention, which, getting into the boring lawyerly stuff, is an agreement that is, approaching 100 years of age at this point. And legislation necessarily in a democracy can't move as quickly as technology can. What this means is that the content sort of escaped the barn, and obviously now there's definitely a number of big platforms that are paying out, but there's definitely also a lot of change going on within the sort of creative balance between how things get contracted and used. And I think it's going to be the principal challenge of our times for creators is just to deal with some sort of revision to what it means to have a right to be able to create and to be able to collect on that right and for how long it'll live on a global basis, because we're no longer in each country having its own market, as it were, with a separate currency and a separate collector. It's more like it's a single world with Russia putting a lot of stuff out into space that is basically all not being paid for.
Right. And then on the other end, we have Disney, who will never give up Mickey Mouse and is always pushing to have copyright protection extended for decades and decades and decades.
Yeah, with no end.
With no end. Moving on to Chris. I have a presentation that I'm doing next Friday for a bunch of financial executives, and it's called Apocalypse Averted: How the Music Industry Was Nearly Wiped Out by the Digital Age. The last 20 years have been absolutely, it's been a roller coaster for the digital, for music. I mean, we used to sell pieces of plastic. Now it's all gone to streaming. What are you doing now today with E1 and all your properties to take advantage of the way things have developed?
Well, we don't, if we put 10 projects out, 8 of them won't be put on physical product. So immediately there's just a general cost savings element there. Like, we're not putting plastic on trucks anymore, and we're not.
Well, there's no manufacturing, there's no warehousing,
Exactly.
there's no transport.
Exactly.
And where are you going to sell them? Because all the record stores are going out of business.
Well, Kevin would argue that people still want to order CDs in the mail and whatnot, and that is true to some degree. There is still a market on a D2C perspective and a website perspective. CDs will never go away. There will be a niche market for them, much like vinyl has seen a resurgence. The vinyl is still less than 5% of our business, but it does, add 20 to 25% on top every quarter. But to answer your question, what we're doing is we've had to do a number of things, but the one I'll touch on is the old model for getting our product out to stores was essentially walking over to HMV, giving them $25,000 and telling them that we wanted the new CD from whoever up in the window at 130 stores from coast to coast, and it was front racked. And you could buy the space. You can't do that with digital service providers. We can't buy a space on New Music Friday on Spotify. We can't buy a space into the new music mix on Apple Music. So what we've had to do is basically reconfigure our relationship with what we consider retail, and rather than walking in with a PO and a number to check, it's more about relationships and providing the curators and the editors of these partners of ours with all the information that they need to have our product flow to the top of the pile every Friday. We can't, I tell my team and my artists all the time, every Friday is Christmas morning. We wake up, we find out what we get on Spotify.
So you're basically, instead of dealing with buyers, you're dealing with curators.
And yes, and I say that with and it's not even a blowing smoke or pumping tires. Like, these are music lovers. These people are in the weeds. They know who plays bass on the Men I Trust record. They know all of this stuff, and it's not about, sure, favors are still kind of lobbed in from time to time, and major labels will get their muscle when they need to, as do we. However, if you look at New Music Friday, on any given Friday, there's 100 songs on there on Spotify or on the YouTube Music Weekly playlist, and the large majority are independent, cross-genre, really digging in the weeds type stuff.
Okay, let's move to our arena. Tell me about esports. I'm a neophyte at this. So explain to me what esports is and why I should care.
So,
And that's not a judgment. I'm just so new at it that I don't, just educate me.
so for anyone who's not familiar with esports, it's essentially the nature of people watching other people play video games. So it's like basketball, you're playing a game, but instead you're watching someone else play a video game. And you should care about it because there's about 200 million people who participates in esports events and activities on a monthly basis. Every third person you meet is a gamer. And I kind of want to define the difference between gaming and esports. So esports will not exist without gaming. Of course, you need games to actually have an esports tournament or event. But every single gamer who plays a video game and wants to compete with other people, that's essentially a very grassroots type of esports event.
There was just a Simpsons episode a couple of weeks back,
Yeah.
and that's what we're talking about.
Yes, and there's last month actually on Twitch. It's kind of like the YouTube for gamers, but Twitch, YouTube and Google, YouTube owns Twitch,
Yes.
right? Yeah. So last month they had about almost 1 billion hours watched on their platform. So I think it was around 890 million hours watched on Twitch for esports.
I read something this week that some really good professional gamers are being paid $50,000 an hour to play games.
Oh yeah, there's actually a professional esports streamer called Shroud. He's from Mississauga, but now he has a mansion in probably LA.
$50,000 an hour, I should hope so.
Yeah, they make an easy couple $1 million a month. Playing video games and people watching them, people donating, people subscribing to them. That's the revenue model for that.
Okay. Wow, I've wasted my life. Back over to Taylor. And in fact, I'm going to throw this open for everybody because I think it's going to be a very contentious question. One of the things that a lot of people within the Canadian music industry, the Canadian entertainment industry, period, are worried about is the siphoning of money away from Canada to Silicon Valley. With radio and television domestically, you have to put so much money back into development of Canadian culture, whether it be the Canadian Media Fund, whether it be Factor, whether it be Star Maker, or any of these other things. And there is a growing chorus of voices within the domestic industry saying that, whoa, 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 whoa. We have to make sure that if these companies are operating in Canada, they're putting something back like the traditional gatekeepers are. There's no way that traditional radio and traditional television will ever be able to not contribute. So what are your views on what's happening digitally with contributing to Canadian culture?
I'll start. So for us, it's incredibly important. Obviously, YouTube is a global platform and you can watch content from all around the world. But for us specifically in Canada, it's so important that we maintain our sense of culture. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar, but we have our YouTube space here in Toronto, which is a fully free production space for creators. So there's community events. We give them all the production equipment, coaching, mentoring on how to build a business. And I think it's really important that we talk about creative entrepreneurship as well, because YouTube, unlike legacy media, there are no barriers to entry. We just recently released a report with Ryerson University last week, and I didn't know this, but it costs more than $6 billion a year to maintain the YouTube platform. And the platform is open for free for everyone to come and share their voice with the world. So they have revealed some amazing stats. There's over 160,000 creators here in Canada, and over 28,000 of them are actually having full-time employment. And what's super exciting is the employment is not just the creator in front of the camera, it's the production staff, the editor, the marketing team. So really people are building businesses, and my job in marketing is to find those amazing voices and lift them up. And I know, Lily Singh is a great Canadian example. One of the biggest YouTube creators here from Mississauga has almost 15 million subscribers to her channel. And they cross over between all of the worlds of entertainment. So not only does she have her YouTube channel, it was just announced that she's actually going to be the first female host in 30 years of a late night talk show on NBC. So, you know, you can build your business on YouTube, but you can also build it around the other portfolios.
So I guess what you'll have to do is really make your case to government organizations and other lobbyists who are saying that these, you know, the FANGs are not putting money into Canadian culture.
Yes, 100%. And our job is to elevate those voices and to share as much as we're doing with policy. And we have great relationships and a bunch of my team there who spends a lot of time in Ottawa seeing what we can do.
Okay, let's talk to the music guys about this now. Who wants to go first?
So I get it. Like if I'm Bell or I'm Rogers or I'm Chorus, and I've been told for years that I have to pay into CanCon, and then Netflix and Spotify and Apple come to Canada and they don't. Like, I get why that's unfair. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a litigator. I don't get in the weeds with business affairs, but I flip and I flop, I guess, is the answer, Ellen, because to my comments earlier, the curators at these partners of ours truly are doing a really great job of promoting the stuff that I bring to them. And when I sign something, I don't sign it for Canada, I sign it for the world, with the intention of keeping that artist signed to an independent Canadian record label, and that IP, that intellectual property, being licensed to us for as long as our deal goes, which means if there's, you know, 80 million people streaming all these songs globally, those are tax dollars that are sitting here, and we're reinvesting essentially into the ecosystem as we generate revenue. It's going to be a long fight. I'm not going to predict whether or not. I know there's been some recent news that the government is finally coming around to put their shoulder into the Netflix tax or whatever else you want to call it. But it's definitely a double-edged sword.
There are other territories around the world that do charge even sales tax.
Quebec.
And Quebec does? Okay, Quebec does. On things like iTunes, for example. You know, if you've ever bought a song on iTunes for $1.29, there's no HST on that, no GST or provincial sales tax, and that's got a lot of people rather upset. You want to weigh in on this?
Sure. Subsidizing the arts and commerce make strange bedfellows at the best of times. There's no question about that. With Canadian content, I think it was totally key in a world of broadcast where the border actually held up. This is the same problem with copyright. As the border is somewhat less relevant to content, I sort of felt like I couldn't be in the content business from Canada. When I was managing artists, the loose story of Canadian fame is that a gold record in Canada means that you basically don't have enough money for a car, but you're too famous to ride the bus. Whereas a gold record in America is actually you're bona fide able to buy a house and have a career. So the benchmarks for success are very different. Well, my business is basically 92% last year non-Canadian, meaning that if I didn't have Blue Rodeo and some other things going on in Canada where the international tours touch Canada, it would probably be zero. And that's because the global marketplace that we're in means that the market sizes are what matters for me. The dollars I'm generating in euro and pound sterling and US dollars just eclipse what the Canadian dollar value is of Canadian dollar sales. So when I look at the arts industries here, I think to myself, well, it has been always true that if the other people have to pay, there probably has to be some sort of tax levied in some sensible way to fund the creative arts business. And I certainly think it's worth subsidizing what is uniquely Canadian in terms of culture. And we need to have decent infrastructure here to make that possible. So on that count, I think it's probably a worthy cause. But anything to do with Ottawa is difficult at the best of times.
Yeah, well, I think we can all agree that we do not want to turn into a Kardashian nation. And we live next door to the biggest net exporter of popular culture in the known universe. And if we don't do something, and I don't know what that something is, we will be back into a position where we were in the 50s and 60s, where we were basically a lonely branch plant of the United States and the UK. And we can't allow that to happen because a lot of us would be out of work and we wouldn't, you know, I was looking at something just today. In the top 10 all-time streamers globally on Spotify, 3 of them are Canadian. There's Drake at #1 with 23 billion lifetime streams. The Weeknd is number 3, just behind Ed Sheeran, and number 7 is Justin Bieber. So with all the subsidies that we've been doing, the infrastructure that we have built, and the support system that we have for our musicians, we punch way above our weight, way above our weight for a country of our size and spread out over this vast distance.
And I should add that all 3 of those artists were signed to U.S. deals. So those aren't making money for Canadian companies. Not all, like, they do really well, and that's great. But when we're bringing it back to what I was saying about keeping intellectual property in Canada with Canadian companies, that's the game, to have a healthy ecosystem of companies here that can keep that talent, rather than having it do 2 records with me and then signing with Columbia for the 3rd because I can't compete anymore. And that's, to your point, where the funding comes in, Alan. If there's more funding, helping smaller labels become big labels, they can safely offer that second deal with confidence.
Yeah, we haven't got a very good record of breaking Canadian acts out of Canada.
Well, yeah, the major labels have had some difficulty for the last 30 years or so, but the indie sector has done quite well. If you think about the likes of, Dallas Green and Metric, Feist, that kind of stuff.
Good point. Okay.
As soon as government money and then all of the other subsidies go into programs that get handed out to arts companies, the paperwork becomes insane. And what's good about it is where we also punch way above our weight in every media enterprise is basically on the management side. So basically, people who can make movies in Canada have no problem existing in Hollywood, because if you could get the money through these systems up here, you're a winning studio executive down there immediately just by experience. And that same thing is true. Like, the entire top of Live Nation is referred to as the Canadian Mafia, because it's basically an all-Canadian team that is the sort of top 5 executives that are there, and really of the top 30, I think 20 of them are. So this is something where disproportionately on a global stage, Canada wins, and it's because we've trained our executives starting with this very difficult paperwork and the socialist environment in which you have to fill it out.
Yeah, Michael Rapino is the CEO. Arthur Fogel is the head of global touring. He's the guy that put the Police back together. Yep. He is the most powerful man in touring that nobody knows of. I actually wrote a movie about him. If you've ever gone to HBO, they show it every once in a while. It's called Who the Fuck is Arthur Fogel?
Great movie.
It's a good movie. Thank you. Thank you. I wrote that. I'm back to Arwina. How does Canada do internationally in respect to esports?
So just piggybacking on the investment and the support, we're actually...
Let me just stop you there. So who is investing in esports Canada right now?
In Canada?
Yeah.
So you have Extreme Venture Partners, who are really into esports. They love esports. There's Amuka Capital, who's also into esports. There's actually about 400 investors all over the world who's focused on investing into esports projects.
How are they drawn into this? Because that, again, I'm coming at it from the point of view of my parents. Why would you invest in playing video games? So how did they become wise to the potential of this sector?
I actually had a really intense discussion about this 2 weeks ago, because it is a concern for investors who want to invest into esports, but they can't fathom supporting video games, supporting their kids playing 16 hours a day playing video games and trying to be a professional esports player. But what attracted them to esports is because they start believing that esports is the future of entertainment and that it's extremely accessible. You could have 4 generations of families who could all compete in an esports tournament together. You can't really do that for traditional sports. You can pick up your mobile phone right now and participate in an esports tournament, but it would take a lot longer for you to participate in a traditional sport tournament. So they also see that a lot of people watch esports. So almost 1 billion hours watched on Twitch last month. That's really attractive to them.
Okay, now, Canada in the esports ecosystem, where do we sit?
So we actually have a Toronto team for Overwatch. It's called Toronto Defiant. So we actually have a spot in the Overwatch League, and that cost us about $20 million, at least $20 million.
Wow.
So it's kind of like the Toronto Raptors in Canada.
Okay. Well, let's go back to Taylor. You have a background in sports marketing.
I had a very quick stint in the world of sports marketing. I worked at Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, and I led some of the marketing for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I am a die-hard Leafs fan. I know there's probably not a lot left, and I'm a bandwagon Raptors fan right now. But yeah, I think I came from a digital marketing background, so when I went there, I thought there was huge opportunity to use technology to expand fandom in the arena, but also outside the arena. And I think, not everyone is fortunate enough to be able to go to a sports game. And when they do go, you can't really always get up close and personal with the creators. In the talent. So digital is an amazing opportunity for storytelling and actually get closer, understand the team, understand the players, understand what's management thinking, and relive a lot of those moments that happen at the game. So super interesting. For the Leafs, we had a huge challenge. They haven't won a Stanley Cup in a little while. So the younger generation is not a huge fan. So we use digital to build an online digital fan club called Club Maple Leafs, and this is for kids and their parents to join, get to know the team, get to know the game of hockey, have gamification, and fall back in love. And that really opens up incremental revenue streams so that when these children grow up, they still are fans of the Leafs and become ticket buyers one day. So it's interesting intersection between digital and sports right now.
Did I read someplace recently that MLSE made a big investment in esports?
I believe so. I don't know. People are shaking their heads. Yes.
Okay. Well,
You may know Arena.
They have a program right now. Actually, our company is a part of the DMZ. It's the world's #1 university-based incubator, accelerator, and now Ryerson and MLSC collaborated together and produced a sports-focused program. Yeah.
what?
It's sports.
You're studying sports video games in university?
No.
Okay.
Ryerson and MLSC collaborated together to put this program focused on sports and esports.
Oh, okay, I get it.
Actually, a lot of programs nowadays have both sports and esports together, kind of combined.
I want to ask Kevin a little bit about concert tickets. If there is a area that is ripe for big disruption, it's the concert ticket industry, because buying a ticket to any event is one of the most frustrating, opaque consumer experiences that you can possibly have.
Amen.
So, and anybody who has dealt with Ticketmaster or StubHub or Tickets Now or anything on this knows exactly what I'm talking about. Do you have any opinions on where the ticketing industry needs to go?
I have far too many to fill this room. I think when I was at the promoter conference in Aspen in December, and I was talking to the guys from Access and Ticketmaster, starting with the statement that I believe primary ticketing is broken, they responded by saying, but look at our numbers. These are record years. How can you say it's broken?
Well, it's record numbers for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're thrashing the golden goose with a golf club, which is the consumer who's willing to go out. And right now it's just become impossible to get a decent ticket for face value to any event of any kind because of the way that this is working. In large part, I think that the reason why that has become the case is because when Live Nation bought Ticketmaster and they started to buy and manage venues, so they had the whole vertical integration in there, it was in their own interest to just pay the act more money as an advance so they could outbid anybody else and just say, sign on the dotted line, we get complete control of everything. So they want to reach towards yield pricing like the plane ticket industry. Can you imagine that that would be the case?
I can tell you right now that they're actually charging a premium at certain shows for an aisle seat.
Yeah.
That's new.
Yeah. Well, it's going to get increasingly despicable until consumers finally stop going. By Live Nation's own numbers, the average concert goer goes to 1.1 shows a year. Now, obviously that means younger people go to a lot more shows, and the old guys who only go out maybe once every 2 years, and that's when James Taylor's coming back, and I handle James Taylor, so I know that. But the idea is that, yes, it's ripe for disruption, but the thing is you're dealing with basically what is a oligopoly, certainly a monopoly in the case of the North American ticketing system of Ticketmaster. And I believe you can't suck and blow at the same time. And basically to say that you're going to stop the secondary market while participating in the secondary market is just obviously impossible on its face. But if you listen to the spin, that's exactly what they say that they're doing. Technology can solve a lot of these problems. The artists could weigh in and actually take a position on this, and some do. But the thing is, it's not enough, and that's sort of the central problem. The reason why we have this issue is because consumers ultimately keep going. We're putting up with the nonsense. We're getting frustrated by it. People getting increasingly rancorous about how crappy it is to go to a show, how much goes to service charges, et cetera, and how just opaque the entire process is. But the tickets still sell. And as long as that's true, they're getting away with murder, they're not going to stop.
Now, and then there are new technologies coming along, like facial recognition technology, which you would upload your image to a database, and that would be your ticket into a show. Imagine that. Geez, doesn't this sound like mainland China?
I don't want to go anywhere that bad. I don't want to go anywhere that bad.
I don't either. I don't either. And Ticketmaster's actually invested in a company. I can't remember what it's called.
Yes.
Do you remember? I can't, but
them.
they've invested in this facial recognition technology.
Yeah, those guys are from the military that actually,
Yes,
yeah.
yes,
So
they are.
that's what we're talking about here is, do we want this in our consumer lives to basically be, followed and tracked everywhere we go? And obviously Google plays a big role here too.
Yeah, what they'll say is that, okay, if you have everything on your phone, what we can do is we can track where you are in the venue, we can eliminate beer lines because you've already paid for it, you just have to flash your phone, or hey, here's a last second upgrade for a seat, for a fee, that's the kind of advantages that they're selling to us, which may in fact be advantages. But again, this idea of privacy and data, where does it go?
Well, the countervailing force to all of that, because I'm a big privacy advocate and I believe they don't have no title to any of this, and it's way too 1984 for me, but the flip side of this is terrorism. We've seen it happen a number of times now, and I think that increasingly going to a concert is going to be a lot more like buying a plane ticket for these reasons.
Yeah, I think so. There was a guy who was in China, this is a good story, a guy in China who was charged, an arrest was out for his warrant because, a warrant was out for his arrest because he had defrauded somebody over $19,000 worth of potatoes. And they found him by using facial recognition technology as he was going into a concert with 65,000 other people. And when he got to his seat, the People's Liberation Army was there to arrest him. Don't mess with potatoes in China. That's the rule there. Does anyone else want to contribute? Before we get to some Q&As, does anybody else have anything they want to say about what they're doing or where they see tech going in their specific endeavors?
So what we're building is actually similar to Ticketmaster. It's an event platform where you can find esports events and buy tickets. But one of the roadblocks that we actually get from speaking to big publishers and massive esports tournaments and events is that there's a contract between, obviously Ticketmaster and the venue. So that's like a solid contract. We can't do anything about it, even if the publisher wants to use us. So now there's actually a shift because in Toronto, as we speak, there's about 6 esports / gaming bars, lounges, internet cafes. So those are actually the typical partners that we will have, and then we will go from there to secure larger contracts with venues. So we would be the partner for them.
How about a company like Cineplex?
We're actually pretty close with Cineplex. Cineplex invested about $50 million into esports 4 years ago. It's called World Gaming, and it's a brand. And now they just announced that if you are interested in participating into esports tournaments, you can win 50,000 scene points on a weekly basis. not bad, free movies. But so our partnership with them would be more of a distribution partnership because they have their own ticketing, they have their own process, right? They have it down pat.
Yeah, they own the venues, they own everything.
Yeah.
And there's free parking in a lot of these places. Well, you know, one of the things that I've been saying for a while is that the motion picture theater industry is going to have a real estate crisis when all of us stop going to movies completely. If we ever have day and date releases on my 65-inch OLED TV at home, I am never leaving the house because I got my own popcorn that I can make for $1, and I don't have to deal with sticky floors or that guy who's texting next to me. So, you know, real estate is a real crisis that's coming to the theater industry. All right, I would imagine that people here have some questions. So we're taking a mic out, and who wants to start? Okay, over here, behind the camera.
Hi, so I have multiple questions. I guess I'll start with one. So Kevin, you're talking a lot about concerts, Ticketmaster. What are the thoughts with, I guess in addition with Arena, with gaming now? For example, we had Fortnite that had a concert with Marshmello DJ, and they had about 11, 12 million people attend digitally in a video game. How do you think that's going to revolutionize the concert experience with the new extensions of VR and AR and people being able to really experience things even with haptic feedback from their own home?
Not fast enough, I think, for it to really change things in terms of the ticketing world. There's going to be increasingly cool things you can do from your house, there's no question. But the reason why live events have been somewhat recession-proof is because there is really nothing like being there. And even if you want to go with the VR version of that, obviously you're constrained at this point by the devices being attached to you and so on. The numbers in esports are astounding. Like, I'm certainly mildly in shock in terms of how much money is actually going around at this point in 1 billion hours a month. It seems like, yeah, is that what we're doing now? Combine that with the weed industry, and I'm wondering where this is all headed. So I think that with respect to the concert business, you know, with Elton John, we did put the Omni camera in the seat in the front row and be able to sit there virtually. The technology is still hard to do that live. It's easier to do it in terms of later on in post-production, so you can put together the edits, and obviously the artists are also control freaks about anything that's going to be post. Live, you can make all the mistakes in the world, nobody can take them back. So there's something to that basically goes with the live experience. Disrupting the way in which the artist can pick a venue. In North America, for sure, Ticketmaster has these lockdown deals with pretty much most arenas and about 60% of the average tour that we handle. We're able to get 8% out of them, but the idea being that in non-Ticketmaster venues, more like 10, 15, 20%, and there are something called an open venue. That's the norm in Europe that is basically less of a factor here, but they do exist, where you can basically bring your own ticketing system when you rent the venue. So just something to consider when you're looking at events on that count. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but that's okay.
We're here.
I'll speak loud. What's the role of live entertainment in all this? You know, a lot of stuff you've been talking is digital, but live is an example of music. That's where artists make all their money now. So, any comment about live?
Is that to me, or? Well, live music is better. Bumper stickers must be issued, I would say. You know, there's no question that touring is going to go on for a long time to come. I think and it is that temporal experience. The one thing that's very weird for an Amazon to understand, because I've talked to them about ticketing, is just that idea that what is a ticket? A ticket is not the experience itself. It's a gateway to a temporary access to a specific seat in a venue where something's going to happen that could be good or bad. And so as long as that's true, and as long as there's some dynamic change to the performance, because as much as even theater, where they do everything with SMPTE down to the second, it's supposed to be the same show every night, it's actually still different because you end up having understudies sub in and whatever. There's something to that live performance being in the room with the performers that seems to be able to keep that wheel turning. If anything, I would say, like I thought 20 years ago when I started my company, the record companies would have been long gone by now. Obviously, they seem to hit the bottom and then bounce back, and they are adapting to the current circumstances, so they seem to still have a role because the artists don't want to do all the other work that would take to keep them famous. So I think at the end of the day, performance is still really a key part of most of pop music. There are lots of artists who've never toured, that sold lots of records. That's a sort of very small niche, but it will always continue to exist as well.
And there's so much money to be made in touring. We can look at Guns N' Roses, who would not get back together for many, many years. When they finally did, in one year, 2018, they made $45 million in box office grosses, which is pretty good money, considering that even though they had a very expensive box set for sale and they had generated new interest in their career, over the course of that tour, in which they generated $45 million, they sold $669,000 worth of product. So live music is going to be here for a while.
Well, and I mean, the credibility of the artist is being strained sometimes on this count. I saw the Eagles for the very first time on Farewell 4. You know, it's been going on years since then.
Yeah, it's between them and The Who.
Yeah, I have the Betamax recording of the
I have that from '82 at Bayview Gardens, yes.
That was the first time they finished. Yeah.
Yes. Next. Oh,
I have a question.
Oh. Okay, over here.
Who is it?
Hi, this is loud. My question's for Chris or Kevin, actually. So I went to a concert recently, and the opening artist, who's a sort of smaller indie artist, kind of brought up the whole idea of Spotify and streaming his music on Spotify, and the idea of, you know, you have to stream a lot in order to actually, for him to make a profit off of it. How has that sort of impacted your business and your relationship with your clients, and kind of how you approach things now?
Great question. So the long and short of it is that most deals that an artists have with labels are based on, they earn a percentage of PPD, which is short for price per dealer. So if you were in a band and you were signed to my label and you had a 40% deal, if I sold a CD 20 years ago to HMV, you'd be entitled, and I charged them $10 for it, you'd be entitled to $4. So that's a percentage. Now what has changed is PPD. PPD changes every day, because what PPD now is, it's the streaming revenue that flows in via our various customers. And not all streams are created equal. 10 million streams from Spotify users in Brazil are not worth as much as the same number from Sweden, because the vast majority of Spotify users in Sweden are paid subscribers, and you flip it around to freemium ad-supported streaming on the other end. So this is a long way of me telling you that the revenue, while it's up quarter by quarter by quarter by quarter, masters, the recording business is definitely back, to Kevin's point. The general rule of thumb is, and this is a gross overgeneralization, is that you need to stream about 1 million songs for the label, or for you if you're just going up directly, to make about $6,000. So that's just the new normal. And what we've done as an industry is we've taken the metric of roughly 1,500 streams to represent one equivalent. So that's the purchase of one CD. If someone still buys a CD, that's one. If they download 10 songs, no one downloads anymore, but that's one equivalent, and 1,500 streams is one equivalent, and that's how we basically do our deals. I forecast something. I think this is worth 20,000 equivalents, and I work my way backwards, and this is what the deal's worth, and we can all make money in a productive environment going forward.
A couple of things there. When you are talking about streaming revenues coming in from different territories, you also have to factor in different currencies, don't you?
Yeah, thankfully I don't have to deal with that, and that comes through the pipe and it ends up on a statement, and then it's all, but you're absolutely right. So the subscription cost, like Spotify wouldn't be breaking into all these emerging markets if they were charging $12.99 USD in those markets. So there's a waterfall there that needs to be considered,
like
for sure.
In India, for example, I don't know what they're charging, but it's a fraction of what we're paying here.
Correct.
Because that's what the market will bear.
Correct. And the point, and that's where the eternal optimism in the music business comes from, is that if you consider the fact that a large portion of the world is still working on flip phones, and the current rate for access for broadband or for even just 3G networks is not quite there. And I say this to people all the time. It's like there's a perverted argument that says Napster saved the music industry. It taught us to digitally distribute, to get our heads out of the sand. Music was the canary in the coal mine. To your point about theaters, it's coming for them. E1's a film company too. I see it and hear it all the time. But what Napster did was it pushed us into a position where we made several mistakes, DRM on CDs, exclusives with one DSP or another, so on and so forth. The road is littered with mistakes that got people like me to the place where we are right now, where we have upwards of 11 or 12 healthy DSP customers globally. And like I was saying to Kevin before this thing started, I'm writing checks to bands twice a year that I never thought they'd make money again.
The Press Play and MusicNet, remember those? The reason the major labels did not get together to buy Napster, as some people suggested they should, was because that would have opened a giant SEC investigation over monopolistic practices. So what they ended up doing was creating two very, very convoluted download platforms. One was called MusicNet and the other one was called Press Play. And you couldn't cross-license between the two, and there was all kinds of DRM on them, and it was just a night, and nobody cared.
I went to a wedding once where someone bought a song they bought their first dance song on iTunes, and the DJ couldn't play it because it didn't fit his Serato system.
Oh yeah, DRM on it. Yeah.
No fucking joke. That was awesome.
Wow. Okay. Next.
I have a question here.
Hi there. My question, I guess, is a crossover in some way. When it comes to the music industry, I think it's now undeniable that people are not only into the auditive, but very much into the visual. I'll direct my question to Taylor then. When it comes to YouTube, creating YouTube music as a way to be a streaming service, while people used to just play playlists of videos at a time, how can YouTube capitalize on both? And for people who work for labels or for different artists, how much do you focus on the visuals nowadays more than you focus on the actual music?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And for everyone who doesn't know, YouTube Music is a new platform. And what we are all about is it's a paid subscription service, but it's about giving artists a home where they can actually have the full world of audio visuals.
Let me just interrupt. This is Google Music Red, Google Play Music.
We've been on some rebranding. So we have Google Play Music, but realized the brand equity is a bit stronger with YouTube. So we have a new streaming service that used to be called YouTube Red in the US, never launched in Canada, launched June 2018 in Canada, YouTube Music. It's a paid subscription service, Spotify, Apple Music. But really it's about showing the entire world of the artists. And I think, label partners, and I hope everyone can agree, is not only do we have the official audio, but we have official music videos. We incorporate live performances and also remixes and covers. So when you love Dan and Shay, which is maybe a country music fan of mine right now, you can explore their entire world and develop deeper relationships and understand what they're about all in one place. So instead of having to switch between YouTube platform, different music streaming services all in one place.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Got one right here.
So I actually work in the athletics and recreation field. I work for Wilfrid Laurier Athletics, and I'm just trying to gauge an idea of how you're being affected by the different social mediums that are out there that have video content available on it, and what you're finding the viewership to be as a result of them. But moreover, how do you keep engaged with the different millennials and Generation Z at this point?
So sorry, I just want to clarify the question. It's about viewership, video viewership on different platforms?
Yeah, but keeping engaged with them and being able to, for the end user, the customer, being able to watch the video content that you're producing.
Yeah, I think YouTube in itself is a huge, obviously, platform. There's over 500 hours of content uploaded every minute. Which I think you just have to think about that. It's huge, and we have now over 2 billion monthly active users on the platform. So I think what's great about the platform is there is so much diversity. Engagement is whatever you choose it to be. So you can find, we like to say, find your tribe. You can find something so niche and think it's only you who loves that content, but there are millions of people around the world also tuning in and viewing. And I think learning is a huge thing that we're also exploring on the platform. Over 70% of Canadians say that that YouTube is actually the #1 media destination that they go to learn something new. So there's huge engagement in that space. Shawn Mendes learned how to play the guitar off of YouTube and then released his first YouTube video and became kind of what he is today. So I think engagement is when you find something that you love and that's personalized, you don't really have to do anything else.
I have one question about learning to play guitar on YouTube. There are a number of guitar people who are putting up videos saying that they're being blocked by major labels on copyright grounds because you're actually playing something. You're showing somebody how to play a well-known song, but they're being blocked. I don't know, that's algorithmic, right? That has to be sorted out.
Yeah, let me take that back to the team. I think we want to encourage everyone to play the guitar, but I think copyright is a huge part of that.
Okay.
Just from my own corner, from the engagement perspective, I think video content is, and this kind of answers your question too. It's like it is right there. The song is first, of course, but 1A is the visual accompaniment to the song. And as the song is ready or the video is ready to be dripped out in teasers or whatnot, in little bits of content, whatever the platform, I have the luxury of really smart people on my team that are rolling these plans out. But what I keep hearing from them, and I think it's true, is that the secret to success in this space is consistent, high quality content and engagement within the comment section. Huge. A retweet or a tag on Instagram from an artist is the new autograph. That's the thing people screen grab and show their friends and whatnot. So that's what I get from my team and what I believe is truthfully very important when it comes to artist promotion in that space.
YouTube comments sections are where sanity goes to die.
Well, that's about it for tonight. Thank you all for coming. I hope you learned something. Hope you met somebody. I hope we helped make your life a little bit richer. We have another event coming up on August the 27th. There is some sports stuff coming up towards the end of the year as well. Maybe we'll have you back for that. There's where we can be contacted. We appreciate you coming. Thanks to our volunteers. Thanks to Spin Master. Thanks to our sponsors. And have a good night.